Good evening. The situation in Nepal is completely out of control this evening. The Gen Z revolution against corruption has met its objective. Prime Minister Oli has resigned and fled. The president has put in his papers. The social media ban has been reversed. The army has now taken over. But the problem, ladies and gentlemen, with the leaderless mob is that it doesn't know when to stop. And that is exactly what is happening. Everything in sight that represents the establishment is simply being torched. The parliament, the Supreme Court, the presidential palace, party offices, homes of ministers with people inside. Ladies and gentlemen, this has happened this evening. The wife of a former Nepal Prime Minister has succumbed to her burn injuries after her home was surrounded and set on fire, and people were not allowed to leave the house. They were quite literally burnt alive. The Hilton Hotel, as we speak, is on fire. So is the headquarters of a Nepalese airline. And as we speak, ladies and gentlemen, there's a fresh set of pictures that is coming to us from Kathmandu. Just take a look at this. This is the building of the Kantipur Publications. This is Nepal's largest media house. That too has been set on fire. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these visuals are worrying for multiple reasons. Do remember this, the so-called Gen Z protest was not just young people. Yesterday, we had seen journalists join in as well. Now, take a look at this. Even media houses being targeted by protesters who simply do not know who the enemy is. They are out of control. Meanwhile, there is more news coming in, and this is news that impacts us directly. There has been arson at the Indian Embassy gate in Kathmandu. The barricades, I believe, have been burned down by protesters. Have people inside been hurt? We are not hurt. I'm not very sure about that. Let me go across to Rishabh, who is joining us on the broadcast. Rishabh, what more are you picking up?
Well, Shreya, one thing is very clear, that none of the embassy staff, including our diplomats, including our local staff in Kathmandu, they have not been hurt. Neither our property has been vandalized or, for that matter, affected in any way. But the major concern is that the protesters have now breached the diplomatic enclave of Kathmandu as well. We have seen, and you have rightly pointed out, that from the Prime Minister's residence to Prime Minister's office, President's office, Supreme Court, Parliament, Hilton Hotel, and whatnot, now the protesters have also entered the diplomatic enclave, and that is a cause of concern, because there are a number of foreign diplomats who live in this area, who have their offices, the embassies, the high commissions in that area. And now what we are given to understand, that there was an arson reported close to the gate of Indian Embassy as well. But we have spoken to the embassy officials. There hasn't been any, vandalism or, for that matter, any attempt to breach the embassy for sure. Okay,
which means for the moment it seems the embassy and the people who live inside the embassy are safe. This was a breach at the entry gates. There was some arson, but largely the embassy remains unharmed. Rishabh, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. I'm also going across to Saket, who is joining us on the broadcast from Birganj. Saket, अभी हम देख रहे हैं कि इंडियन एम्बेसी के बैरिकेड्स को भी टॉर्च किया है. हालांकि वहां पे बहुत नुकसान नहीं बताया जा रहा है. लेकिन अगर काठमांडू की इस समय बात करें तो वहां पे सिचुएशन क्या है? क्योंकि जेनजी जो रेवोल्यूशनरीज हैं, जो अपने आप को रेवोल्यूशनरीज बोल रहे हैं, वो कह रहे हैं हम तो ये आर्सन कर नहीं रहे हैं, हम तो ये आवाजाही कर नहीं रहे हैं. अगर वो ये आवाजाही नहीं कर रहे तो फिर कौन कर रहा है?
देखिए, भले ओली को लेकर जिस तरह से इस्तीफे की मांग हो रही थी, उन्होंने इस्तीफा दे दिया, लेकिन सड़कों पर प्रदर्शन अभी भी है. और प्रिकॉशन के तौर पर सरकार ने जो कर्फ्यू है वो नेपाल के कई शहरों में लगाया हुआ है. और बीरगंज में भी अभी आपको हम पहले तस्वीर दिखा दें. यहाँ पर सड़कों पर अभी भी आप देखिए कर्फ्यू है. लोग कुछ पैदल जरूर चल रहे हैं, लेकिन तमाम जो दुकानें हैं वो बंद है. यहाँ पर सन्नाटा है पूरी सड़कों पर. कुछ गाड़ियां शाम को 6 बजे थोड़ी देर के लिए रिलीफ मिला था, जिस वजह से कुछ गाड़ियां अभी सड़कों पर दिख रही है. लेकिन सबसे इस पूरे प्रोटेस्ट के दौरान अगर हम देखें तो सबसे ज्यादा खास करके जो सरकारी ऑफिसेज है उसको टारगेट किया जा रहा है. जो पुलिस चौकी है, पुलिस का जो ऑफिस है उसको टारगेट किया जा रहा है, नगर निगम के जो ऑफिसेज हैं या सरकारी जो भी ऑफिस है उसको टारगेट कर रहे हैं लोग, वहां पर तोड़फोड़ हो रही है, वहां पर आगजनी हो रही है। और इसी के तहत जिस तरह से काठमांडू में भी लगातार तस्वीरें दिख रही है कि किस तरह से प्रधानमंत्री के आवास से लेकर तमाम जगहों पर आगजनी तोड़फोड़ वहां पर भी की गई है। तो जो गुस्सा है वो सरकार के खिलाफ है, इसीलिए तमाम सरकारी चीजों को नुकसान पहुंचाया जा रहा है। हालांकि इन लोगों से अपील लगातार की जा रही है कि चूंकि अब प्रधानमंत्री ओली का जो इस्तीफा है वो हो चुका है, तो ऐसे में सरकारी संपत्ति जो आम लोगों की संपत्ति है उसको नष्ट ना करें, लेकिन बावजूद इसके लोग अभी
Okay, Saket, we leave it there for the moment. Saket, they're reporting for us from Birganj, telling us that everything that is associated with the establishment is currently being targeted, which means publication houses, media houses, the presidential palace, the prime minister's residence, all ex-prime minister's residence, airline offices, absolutely nothing is being spared. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the point. The revolution is over. Now what we are seeing on the streets of Nepal is complete chaos and anarchy. The mobs, rebels, students, revolutionaries, call them what you will, are saying that they will not stop till Prime Minister Oli is hanged. Now, he's taken off from his residence in a helicopter. Where he is something we are not very clear about. The Nepalese army is saying that he has been escorted out of the country, but he was supposed to hold an all-party meet. Clearly, that is not happening. Let's listen in to what some of the protesters are saying.
इसी तरह से जिस तरह से टायर जलाया गया है ना, उसी तरह से जला देंगे ना तो वो खुश हो जाएंगे, सब खुश हो जाएंगे। राजीनामा देने से कुछ नहीं होने वाला। कल जो लोग थे वो वापस आएंगे क्या? न्याय चाहिएगा, न्याय चाहिए। जो 18-16 कल मरा है उसका न्याय चाहिए। केपी ओली को मारना चाहिए, उसको हम मार दूंगी। अभी की अब भी मैं मारूंगा, मैं मारूंगा, केपी ओली को मैं मारूंगा। बस खाली वो बच्चे लोग गए थे अपना आवाज रखने के लिए, पीसफुल प्रोटेस्ट बोल के उन लोगों को हत्या किया। It's a murder case.
The anger, ladies and gentlemen, may be justified. It is justified. Unemployment is high. The governments present and past have been very corrupt. Nepotism is widespread in Nepal. And a ban on social media sites was seen as an attempt by these youngsters to muzzle their voice. Then came the shooting yesterday on protesters as they were trying to breach the parliament. That left 19 people dead. The death toll has now gone up to 21. So as I said, the anger is justified, but not the anarchy we are seeing today, given the fact that the objectives of the so-called revolution has been met. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in this situation, will any right-minded citizen wish this for their own country? Clearly not. But sometimes the loose cannons in India's opposition camp really don't think straight. So we have had Sanjay Raut of the UBT issue a dire warning to the Prime Minister in an ex-post. In fact, he's tagged Prime Minister Modi on this post. He says, and I'm quoting him here, "Beware, this situation can arise in any country." Now, if Mr. Raut left any ambiguity on what the message was and to who it was meant for, he was very ably helped by other opposition members. In a series of tweets, Mr. IP Singh of the Samajwadi Party has spoken of, quote unquote, I'm quoting him here, the 75-year-old dictator who needs to be removed to save India. The reference, ladies and gentlemen, obviously is to Prime Minister Modi. This Samajwadi Party leader is also urging India's youth to rise and take control, just like young people have risen and taken control of Nepal. He's going on to say, Nepal today, India tomorrow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is perfectly fine for the opposition in our country to not like the Prime Minister or constantly paint him as a failure. It's fine because it is their job. But why curse your own country? Why curse India with this chaos while you target the Prime Minister? Honestly, does anyone in their right minds need to see the sort of pictures coming out of Nepal in India? Before we go to our guests, listen in to what the opposition is saying.
All neighboring countries, it has happened in the Sri Lanka. It is still Bangladesh. I don't think Bangladesh is peace is maintained till late, and now Nepal. Now same dictatorship is going on here also. People are vandalizing, they are blaze the houses of the ministers over there. It may happen. These are known as volcanic reactions, and it needs, you need just a small fire for that, and that it erupts. And if it erupts in India, it will be uncontrolled.
हम अपने देश की बात करें, भारत की, यहाँ का युवा सड़कों पर है, महिलाएं सड़कों पर हैं, बेरोजगारी, भूखमरी, बेकारी जिस स्तर पर नरेंद्र मोदी ने फैलाई है, काठमांडू की जो आग है वो भारत में भी आ सकती है। इसलिए जो जनता की रजामंदी के बगैर जो लोग सत्ता चलाना चाहते हैं, एनडीए को भी, भारत के लोगों को भी सोचना पड़ेगा कि इस देश की जनता के खिलाफ मत जाओ।
Veena Sikri is a former diplomat joining us on the broadcast. Kapil Srivastava is a spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party with us as well. And Adesh Kafle is a student from Nepal joining us on the broadcast as well. Adesh, सबसे पहले I'll come to the Indian politicians in just a bit. लेकिन आदेश, मैं आपसे एक चीज जानना चाहती हूँ. आपके ऑब्जेक्टिव्स तो मीट हो गए हैं ना? आप चाहते थे that the Prime Minister Oli quits. He has quit. In fact, there are reports he's even left the country. The President of Nepal has quit as well. The entire cabinet is out. The army has taken over. Can I then ask you, what is the need for this arson and chaos? This is your own country.
Okay, so I will speak in English right now.
Yes, please go ahead.
I prefer the English language.
Yeah.
Let me be very clear that the Gen Z protest, which started with the fair principle of equality, ending corruption, and implementation of laws, has been exploited. As you yourself repeated in the past, that the protest which was started by Gen Z has been exploited by some opportunities. We want peace. We want reform, not revenge. Gen Z want everyone to stop right now. In social medias, me and my friends, everyone are requesting others to stop. The thing is, our protest has been exploited heavily by some opportunities to create arson. Maybe they are goons who have escaped the prison, or just some angry people who are not thinking intellectually about reform, but rather focusing on revenge. Right now, we want peace and reform.
Okay, Adesh, can I ask you, when you say your protest has been overtaken, infiltrated by opportunists, who are these opportunists? Are these Nepalis, locals, are they politicians, or are they probably some foreign players?
That's the problem. We have not identified properly who are these opportunities. But I can assure you that is not us Gen Zs. Our objective has been fulfilled, and we don't know who is exploiting this protest of us Gen Zs and youth. This is totally wrong. We want to identify who is doing this. We want to request them to stop right now immediately.
Adesh, then can I ask you this? We live in the age of social media. In fact, when the social media sites in Nepal were banned, it is something that triggered these protests. What was your objection? The objection of all students rightly was that this is muzzling your voice. Now that social media is back on track, why don't you have your leader, Sudan Gurung, come out and say, not in my name. This arson will not happen in our name, not happen in the name of Nepal's students and Gen Z. These are some random people, criminal elements who are torching the parliament, torching everything that is coming in their way. We have nothing to do with it. That clear message has not come either, Adesh.
Yes, so see, there was a huge problem. While Gen Z were protesting, we didn't predict of this much chaos and this much arson. We were just peacefully protesting. Anger escalated when students were killed. And right now, the problem is when we started the protest, we were going independently. We didn't want any leader to represent us. We just wanted Gen Z as a whole generation to go to the government and make them realize, hey, hello, we are here, we feel something. But the problem is, as soon as the students were killed, people all over the Nepal were in sheer anger. They went, escalated, arson, goons, everything happened. And since, as you said, that there is no leader earlier, we can't say that we are not accountable. Gen Z are trying to stop.
Okay, Veena Sikri, but is that the problem? There is no clear leader or face. There are a couple of names, but there is no clear leader or face to this protest. This was an organic protest, and therefore when these protests are being infiltrated or being used by opportunists, as Adesh is saying, you're not in a position to identify it. And the mob, which doesn't have a leader, really doesn't know where to stop.
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem. We didn't have a leader at that point of the time.
Okay.
It was not necessary that we Gen Z needed a leader. As I said, everything that is happening right now was totally unpredictable. And since unpredictable circumstances arised, we were not prepared for it. And without a leader, our name, Gen Z youth, everything is being heavily exploited.
Okay. Veena Sikri, would you want to come in here? Abhijit, hi, good evening. You're joining us on the broadcast. Thank you very much. Veena ji, would you want to come in before I shift the focus to what is happening in India?
Well, I want to say 2 or 3 points very clearly. Well, Gen Z Nepal also does not have a leader. I think as of now, if you look at their website, there is no leader. There is just the information. And Gen Z Nepal did have certain demands that they had put on their website. As of yesterday, they were there asking for all members of parliament to resign and asking for, an interim government to come in and so on. But as of now, there are very important points. And democracy, why is the mob being allowed to take over? This is so much parallel with what has happened in Bangladesh that I'm absolutely amazed at the similarity and the same playbook being played out. I've just heard from Kathmandu, and maybe Mr. Kapli can confirm that the president of Nepal has invited the Gen Z group for a dialogue. So I do hope that the Gen Z group will go for the dialogue and that there will be peace and stability in Nepal, because there should be a dialogue and the army will be able to stop the violence.
Adish, can you confirm that to us, that the president of Nepal has actually invited these Gen Z revolutionaries to come for a dialogue? Is that something you can confirm?
Yeah, that is something I can confirm. He has invited us, Gen Zs, to negotiate.
Okay, and you have said a yes to that?
No, there are. I can't confirm if Gen Zs are saying yes or no. Right now, the shift is on stopping the protest.
Okay. Kapil Srivastava, you're spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party. You're joining us on the broadcast as well. And I just want to focus for the next 5 to 6 minutes on what is happening in India. Kapil ji, will any right-minded citizen of this country wish upon India what is happening in Nepal? Why are your leaders saying all sorts of things, saying कि अभी नेपाल में आज हो रहा है, कल इंडिया में हो जाएगा, तानाशाह को हटाओ, 75 years का तानाशाह है, ये खुद तो जाएगा नहीं, रेवोल्यूशन ही करना पड़ेगा, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा? बिना सोचे समझे क्यों बोलते हैं आपके नेता?
नहीं, बिल्कुल ये सोच समझ करके ही उन्होंने कहा। और मैं आपको इस वजह से कह रहा हूं, ये कारण दूर नहीं है। जब कोई सरकार जो चुनी हुई होती है वो आम जनता के मुद्दों से भटक जाती है, जैसे आपने देखा कि किसान बिल जो ये 3 लेकर के आए वो किसानों के विरुद्ध था। 700 किसानों की शहादत हो गई, साल भर से ज्यादा जो है प्रोटेस्ट चला, आपके सामने है। तो ये तानाशाही नहीं दिखती कि आप लाए थे तो भी आपने कहा कि देश हित में ला रहे हैं, और आपने जब उठाया 700 किसानों को शहीद करा देने के बाद तो भी आपने कहा कि देश के हित में उठा रहे। फिर जिस तरीके से जो है वो मणिपुर जलता रहा, आपके सामने है जिस तरीके से चीजें हो रही हैं, जिस तरीके से देश के अंदर बेरोजगारी चरम सीमा पर है, जिस तरीके से भ्रष्टाचार चरम सीमा पे है, और आप ये कहते हैं कि हम टॉलरेंस बर्दाश्त नहीं करेंगे, लेकिन जिन पर आपने भ्रष्टाचार का आरोप लगाया कि किसी ने 70,000 करोड़ का किया, किसी ने 40,000 करोड़ का किया, उनको तो आप डिप्टी मुख्यमंत्री बना रहे हो, मुख्यमंत्री बना रहे हैं। तो ये देश की जनता को बेवकूफ कतई ना समझा जाए। फिर उसके बाद उपराष्ट्रपति अगर अचानक किसी तरीके के इस्तीफा देते हैं, वो सारी चीजें आज लोकतांत्रिक तरीके से ये देश चल रहा है।
अगले 40 मिनट में कापिल जी सुनिए, आप कह रहे हैं, आपके नेता कह रहे हैं, आप तो खैर क्या कह रहे हैं, आपके नेता कह रहे हैं कापिल जी कि जो जबरदस्ती सत्ता में बना रहेगा उसको हटाना पड़ेगा। अब आप मुझसे कहना चाह रहे हैं कि मोदी जी जबरदस्ती सत्ता में बने हुए हैं। अब जरा वेट कर लीजिए आप 45 मिनट्स कापिल जी, आपको पता चल जाएगा कौन जबरदस्ती सत्ता में बना हुआ है। वाइस प्रेसिडेंट इलेक्शंस के रिजल्ट्स आने वाले हैं, आप खुद देख लीजिएगा। नंबर टेस्ट तो हो ही गया, तो आप क्या बोल रहे हैं कि ये प्रधानमंत्री जो हैं ये लोगों की पसंद के नहीं हैं? नंबर्स तो हैं ना उनके पास, जिताया तो उन्हीं को ना। और ऐसी आपको देश में क्या आग लगी हुई दिख रही है, या देश में ऐसा क्या एंगर दिख रहा है कि आप हमारी सिचुएशन को नेपाल से कंपेयर कर रहे हैं? देखिए, आपने प्राइम मिनिस्टर को टारगेट करना है, करिए, बहुत अच्छी बात है, वो आपका काम है। अपने देश को तो कम से कम टारगेट मत करिए। Anyhow, I'll let in Abhijit come in and respond to you. Abhijit, would you want to respond to what some leaders, I won't say all leaders in the opposition, but some leaders in the opposition have come out to say that if it is happening in Nepal, it can very well happen in India as well tomorrow?
Look, Shreya, the only leaders, I don't think we should blame the parties and the party leaders for it. It's just some occasional loose cannon out here. One gentleman is a known loose cannon who's cost his party very dearly in a large western state. And there are a few loose cannons here and there in the SP as well. There's nothing that can be done about the loose cannons. Still, the party leader actually says something. I'm not going to take it very seriously. Let's ignore this because, these are small fry. They're desperate for attention. They can't win at elections, so they're trying somehow to boost their social media appeal or whatever. Best of luck to them. You know and I know that, for a pan-India revolution to happen is virtually impossible. We were besieged in Delhi. You and I know the kind of, I think most of the panelists here, Ambassador Sikri would also know the kind of travails we had to go through when the protesters came and blocked all our roads, made our lives miserable. Is that democracy for you? See, they have a right to protest. They don't have a right to disrupt. But they disrupted. That is not democracy. That is not democracy by any stretch of, going around burning down people's houses is not democracy. Burning down the Prime Minister's house, burning down 3 former Prime Minister's houses, burning down the President's private house is not democracy. Right. But look, these are, there is a paucity of education in our political system. There is a paucity of human, the humanities education, especially in certain elected leaders. There's nothing we can do about it. Let's focus on Nepal.
Give me a minute here. Veena ji, I think you wanted to come in. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I want to come in very strongly. In fact, I agree with Mr. Fully what he's saying, that we are, first of all, discussing Nepal. And I think in India, it is absolutely wrong and incorrect to say that a vibrant democracy, a person elected 3 times with a majority which is better each time, and then a country, an economy which is growing at 7.8% in the first quarter of this financial year, and jobs being created. Of course, there are always problems to be overcome in a democracy. A democracy is never free of problems, and these are being overcome collectively by everybody coming together. And you're absolutely right to talk about the vice presidential elections which have been held just today. Everything happening in a proper democratic way. And I think in India, the biggest factor for stability is the very strong and prosperous middle class. Now, the middle class, when it is prosperous and more people coming out of poverty and joining the middle class, that is a factor for stability. That is a factor because people don't want that instability which is being preached by some few individuals just to make hay while Nepal is suffering. Nepal is suffering terribly. The people of Nepal are very unhappy with what is happening. And the democracy that is taking over in Nepal is certainly not what the people of Nepal want. It is just a small group of people trying to impose their will, and it is our everybody's best wish and desire that the army is able to control the situation, and the president, who has called Gen Z Nepal and others for a dialogue, is able to come up with a stable solution that will end all this mobocracy and impose terrorism by a few. So I think we should hope for that. We should be working towards that, to have Nepal come back to stability, Nepal having a stable government, because with the president being there, earlier somebody had tried to say that, there's some news about the president not being there in Nepal, but I'm so glad that the president is there. He's preserving the constitutional democracy of Nepal. He's calling the people for a dialogue. He has given the authority to the army to bring the situation under control. And it is our hope, and we should all together want our neighborhood to be peaceful and not have a situation that we had in Bangladesh or, that was there in Sri Lanka earlier. But in Sri Lanka, they came back to a democratic situation through democratic elections.
Correct.
So we should hope for that in Nepal as well.
I'll just come to that, Kapish. I just need to take a minute from Kapish, because Kapish ji, आप जरा बताइए, आपने अभिजीत मित्रा को सुना, आप मुझको बताइए कि क्या आपकी पार्टी का ये ऑफिशियल स्टैंड है कि हमारे देश में नेपाल स्टाइल के एक रेवोल्यूशन की जरूरत है, एक 75-year-old डिक्टेटर को हटाने के लिए? क्या ये आपके पार्टी का ऑफिशियल स्टैंड है? क्योंकि अगर ऑफिशियल स्टैंड है तब तो दिक्कत है।
देखिए, पहली बात तो हम आपको ये कह रहे हैं कि पार्टी हमारी किसी भी कीमत पर वायलेशन को सपोर्ट नहीं कर सकती, लेकिन ये आगाह जरूर करती है इस देश की सरकार को कि अगर आप संवैधानिक संस्थाओं के चूल्हे हिलाएंगे, अगर आप भ्रष्टाचार में पूरी तरह से लिप्त होंगे, अगर आप हर तरीके से एनार्की फैलाने की कोशिश करेंगे, अगर आप जो है वर्ग को विभेद करेंगे, आर्थिक रूप से आप फर्जी आंकड़े पेश करेंगे, जैसे कि अभी ये कह रही थी 7% से ऊपर है बास्केट ऑफ कमोडिटीज में। अगर आप ऑर्गेनाइज सेक्टर
अनार्की फैलाने की बात कर रहे हैं, अनार्की आज देख लीजिए कौन फैला रहा है। मोदी सरकार अनार्की फैला रही है या नेपाल में सो कॉल्ड रेवोल्यूशनरीज फैला रहे हैं? आप देख तो लीजिए किसकी साइड पे हैं आप, तापिश जी। Abhijit, can I just come in here? There's been a lot of commentary since morning about, the Sri Lanka, the Bangladesh toolkit being at play in Nepal. Now, by the looks of it, for those of us who have tracked these protests since yesterday, they are looking pretty organic. So far, it doesn't seem like there is any foreign hand involved or there is a toolkit involved. But is that the danger going forward? All the demands have been met. Logically, this protest should have stopped. It hasn't. Does it tell you something?
It tells you a lot, Shreya, because if you remember the moment Sheikh Hasina fled and the moment President and Prime Rajapakse's house got sacked during the Sri Lankan revolution,